Welcome, I'm Cary Kelly. This is my kitchen and it's almost Thanksgiving. Next week is America's favorite holiday where we gather around with family and friends and have more food than anybody can possibly eat. Abundance seems to be the name of the game for Thanksgiving holidays. After a big Thanksgiving meal, there is inevitably lots of food left over, and for days we eat turkey sandwiches. Some people make turkey soup. So a couple of years ago, I started thinking, what is something more creative that I can do with Thanksgiving leftovers? And I went back to a cookbook that I have had on my shelf for at least 20 years called Pot Pies. It is this darling little cookbook that's written by a Scandinavian American woman in the Midwest. It has, I don't know how many recipes, but the most creative and delicious pot pies, which I think are, the quintessential winter meal. And what I found in her book is something called Thanksgiving in a Pie. So I have basically taken her recipe, which you can find on my website, a link to this video, and you can see how to make it. But I want to talk through a couple of things that makes this pie unbelievably versatile. First of all, you can use all leftovers, and that's what I love about it. Other than making a pie crust that you put in a springform pan, everything else that goes in here can be something left over from your Thanksgiving table. You can also make it from scratch, and if there's only a couple of you having a Thanksgiving dinner, this is kind of a good alternative because so many Thanksgiving items produce a lot of quantity and you need a lot of people to eat them all. This is maybe a good alternative for a Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm going to assemble this pie and talk through how you might make it using leftovers or from scratch and see what you think about Thanksgiving in a pie. So here are the components. Let me tell you what is in here. What we're doing is layering all of the traditional Thanksgiving dishes into one pie. So we have stuffing, we have our turkey, which has been sliced, we have cranberry sauce, so all of the goodies. What I've done is started with a beautiful flaky buttery pie crust. I use Cheryl Day's recipe, and I've put a link to her pie crust recipe in my recipe for this Thanksgiving pie. It is buttery and flaky, so easy to make and unbelievably reliable. So if you're like me and you're not somebody who bakes frequently, this is a pie crust that I can feel confident making anytime. So this is a 9-inch springform pan. You want a springform pan because you want to be able to release the pan easily from the pie when it's cooked. Most of the elements in this pie are already cooked with one exception, and I'm going to show you what that is now. My springform pan is lined. I'm going to dress it with a whole grain mustard. This just adds a little flavor. So we're just going to brush that all over the bottom. This gives a really nice tang. The acidity is important. Acidity in Thanksgiving is, when you're planning a Thanksgiving menu, it's really important to think of elements that have some acidity because Thanksgiving dinner is so carb and fat laden, which of course makes them delicious, but it also makes them maybe a little harder to eat and we get full so fast. So when you can add a little acid in the form of salads or condiments, that's what this mustard is doing, adding a lot of flavor and a little acidity. So we've got that coated with mustard, and our next layer is actually made of ground turkey. I call it a pate. This is ground turkey, a mixture of white and dark meat. Now, if you have an attachment on your mixer and want to grind your own leftover turkey, you can do that, or go to the store and buy ground turkey. Either way, this is such an adaptable menu. What I've done to make this super delicious is to mix 1 egg to bind it together, a nice grinding of nutmeg, almost a teaspoon, 2 tablespoons of brandy, yum, and 2 cloves of garlic. So this just gets all mixed up. And we're going to take this out and line the bottom of this pie with this. So I'm just going to take this, bring it over, and take it straight from the mixer right into the pie. This is the only uncooked portion of this pie other than the crust, of course. So we are going to bake this because we've got to cook this layer and then meld everything together after a couple of hours in the oven. So this adds both a wonderful, almost creamy texture, as well as great flavor and more of the turkey. Let's just spread this in the bottom of this springform pan. You could use your hands very easily too. And this cooks down really almost like a pâté. It's so soft, and it adds a beautiful layer inside this flaky, flaky crust. Now what we're going to do, I have a little over a pound of sliced turkey. And what I've done is cut it in smaller pieces. You could just lay slices, but I have found this is just an easier way to cut it, serve it, and eat it. So small pieces of turkey. So this is about just a little over half a pound that I'm putting on top of the pâté. Spread it evenly around. And you can imagine if you are using your leftovers, you're just cutting up the turkey you already have, white meat, dark meat, the whole thing. Now I'm going to brush a little more of that nice grainy mustard on here. You could use any kind of mustard. The acidity, I think, is really what's so good with this, and the flavor of the mustard. Sometimes around Thanksgiving you see cranberry mustard. I think that'd be delicious. You could use Dijon mustard. So give that a little brush, and then we're going to sprinkle a tablespoon of brandy. The brandy, as you can see, is going in 3 different times. One in the pâté, now on top of the turkey. We're going to do it again on the last layer of turkey. It adds a really nice sort of caramel. Once that alcohol is cooked off, the brandy brings a little tad of sweetness and caramel sort of flavor. If you don't like brandy or want to avoid the alcohol for any reason, here's what I would use as a substitute, is some maple syrup diluted with a little bit of water until it's much thinner, and sprinkle that over the layers instead of the brandy, and you're going to get some of the same flavor effect. Any brandy will do. I usually keep in my pantry an inexpensive brandy from the liquor store, because you want something that has a brandy flavor, but don't use a VSOP or really expensive brandy in your cooking. But the maple syrup diluted with a little water is a perfect substitute that will give you the same effect. Now, this is a stuffing. Again, use the stuffing that you already had for your Thanksgiving. Buy a stuffing mix at the grocery store if you want to make it simple. I made this stuffing with some onion and wheat bread and wonderful spices. So if you want this recipe, it is part of the Thanksgiving pie recipe on my website. So what you want to do is pat this down, start to create some compact layers, because we've got more to go in this pie. You get all the spices in the stuffing, so think about the flavors we're layering in here: the brandy, the mustard, the nutmeg, and the pâté. I have some thyme and a little oregano. I put sumac in here, some wonderful spices. Okay, this is starting to look really good. I can smell all the different components. Smell amazing. Now, we've still got the other half of our sliced turkey. Again, it was about 1.25 pounds total, divided in half. So we're gonna put this on top here, spread it around evenly, separate some of the slices so that everybody gets a good bite of turkey when you slice up this pie. Doesn't have to be precise, but get a little even distribution is all you're looking for. Okay, and now we want to repeat our mustard. You're just going to pat around the turkey. You know, if you cook a different kind of protein for your Thanksgiving dinner, you could use, well, you could use chicken, of course. Any time of year you might want to make this. You don't have to wait for turkey season. You could use duck, goose, any of the traditional birds that are cooked for this holiday would work perfectly here. Another little bit of brandy we're going to sprinkle around. And again, just kind of sprinkle it all around. Precision is not really a part of this recipe. Distribution is what you want. Now, we have a pie that's ready to bake. The last thing I'm going to do is to take a piece of parchment paper that's about the diameter of this pan and give this a nice, not too hard, I'm being a bit gentle, but I do want to pat this down. So you want some compression in all the layers so when they bake you can easily slice it and see each layer. And then I'm going to give a little egg wash to the edge of the crust. And this is going to go into a 300-degree oven. And while it's baking, we have one more step. So a light egg wash, just to give this crust a little sheen. When you put the crust on, for those of you who bake pies more often than I do and love to get into the crimping, remember this is a spring-form pan and you're going to be removing it, so you can't have too much of the pastry left on the outside or it'll just break off when you take it apart. One other word on the pastry. I told you about Cheryl Day's wonderful, reliable recipe, but I will tell you, you can easily go to the store and buy dough and roll it out and put it in here and not make it from scratch. So this pie, what I love is every element can be made from scratch or no elements made from scratch. Whatever suits you to come out with a Thanksgiving in a pie. If you're going to buy a dough from the grocery store, don't buy puff pastry because it does just what it's called. You want to look for a pie dough. So Dufour is a brand that you find in most grocery stores. It's a really nice flaky buttery dough. All you're going to do is roll it out so that you have the same diameter. This is a 9-inch spring-form pan and you want enough to come up the sides and slightly over the top. Now, this baby's ready to go in the oven. So I've set this on a baking sheet, just in case some of the juices run out some to protect your oven. Goes on a baking sheet, and this is going to go straight into a 300-degree oven. And in just a moment, we'll pull one out and show you what it looks like when it's finished. You want to leave this in your 300-degree oven uncovered for 2 hours or until a thermometer stuck all the way down to the pâté layer registers 165. I have found if you're using a 9-inch spring-form pan, assuming your oven temperature is accurate, 2 hours is a good number. But at about 2 hours, maybe slightly under, put a thermometer, and again, make sure you go all the way down to the pâté layer because that's the only uncooked portion of this pie. And you want to make sure that's been cooked to 165. 2 hours has lapsed, our pie is finished, and I've allowed it to sit on a cooling rack for about half an hour. And I've left it just like this, the paper on it, to cool. After the first 15 minutes, I removed the spring-form pan layer. And what I did is when I unbuckled it, I pushed it up from the bottom so I didn't break up the crust on the top too much. So this is what your almost finished pie looks like. So we can pull off that parchment layer, which helped us tamp it down, but also helped keep the top layer from overcooking and burning. Now the final step, the Thanksgiving jewel, is cranberry sauce. Just like everything else in this layer, if you're one of those, because we all know this is the big debate of Thanksgiving, canned cranberry sauce or not, you could put canned cranberry sauce on this. Just spread it evenly around. You could buy a ready-made cranberry sauce at the store, or you can do like I did and make your own. And I have added a recipe. Cranberry sauce is so easy to make. What I like about making it is that you can customize it to your taste. You can make it as sweet as you like. You can add whatever spices you like. So I just got a bag of fresh cranberries. I cooked it down with some water, lots of orange zest, a little orange liqueur, ginger, sumac, salt, and pepper. And this recipe will be connected to the video, so you can make this yourself if you want to. It couldn't be easier. You just make it, refrigerate it overnight, and this is the last step for this pie. These are all the quintessential Thanksgiving flavors. Your turkey, your stuffing, your cranberry sauce. The crust is really like a dinner roll. The only thing we're missing, frankly, is mashed potatoes. I'm not so sure you couldn't add a layer of mashed potatoes to this pie. I might have to experiment with that sometime, or maybe you will. I think that could be delicious. This pie can be served room temperature, or you could reheat it if you want to serve it hot. Again, so versatile, so easy. Now, what you're typically going to do after you've put your cranberry sauce on, I made sure it was chilled before I put it on. You would want to put this back in the refrigerator for an hour or so to set the cranberry sauce, just so it makes it a little neater when you cut it. But I really can't wait. So we're going to go ahead and cut this pie so I can show it to you. And maybe I'll even take a bite. So let's serve ourselves a piece of Thanksgiving in a pie. It's a lot of layers to cut through, so make sure you have a good knife. Make sure you've gone all the way to the bottom. And I like to serve this. I think this is great for lunch, a nice lunch, especially if you have out-of-town guests for Thanksgiving. Make this for lunch the next day and serve it with a nice salad. It's almost like having a Thanksgiving quiche. And here's your Thanksgiving in a pie. And you can see each of the layers are cranberry sauces. Jeweled it, but you have your pate on the bottom, your turkey, there's stuffing in there. So let's take a little bite. Or maybe a big bite. I love this. You know how when you have a Thanksgiving plate, you try to find a graceful way to get a little bit of everything on your fork from your Thanksgiving buffet and put it in your mouth? This pie does that for you. The pate gives you a nice strong turkey flavor, but that little bit of nutmeg comes through, the sweetness of the brandy. My cranberry sauce is a little more on the tart side, so it has that little bit of a bite with all that other richness from the stuffing. You could make it more sweet and have even a slightly different flavor, but I just love this. I think it is delicious, and I think it could complete your Thanksgiving. I hope you have wonderful holidays, and may there be much abundance and friendship in your kitchen. Thank you for being with me today.